A week ago, I said that the 2024 New York Jets were the worst football team money could buy, but I was wrong. They're even worse than that. Their loss to the Patriots proves it. All this and more today on Locked On Jets.
You are Locked On Jets, your daily New York Jets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome. This is the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's Monday, October 28th, 2024, and I'm your host, John B. from gangreennation.com. Thanking you so much for making the show your first listen or first watch every day. Big shout out to you everydayers. This is a daily podcast covering the New York Jets with new episodes each day through the week, Monday through Friday. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Today, we're going to try and make sense of an inexplicable loss by the New York Jets. They fell to the New England Patriots yesterday in Foxborough, 25-22. We'll try and pick up the pieces and figure out where this team goes from here. We'll talk about why this game was really a microcosm of this season. But we're going to start by putting this into a bigger perspective, because in the big picture, this is a pretty significant development. And it shows that this season is really lost. At 2-6, it's very difficult to see how the New York Jets recover from this. And you can't just talk about the 2024 NFL season when you put the New York Jets into context. You can't even talk about them in terms of just the NFL. This team needs to be put into the larger context of sports history right now, because this team is an all-time failure. It's an all-time bust. When you talk about a team that added so much star power, a team that had such high expectations, and a team that will fall so short of those expectations. When you go all in with a star-studded roster, there are the teams that succeed and win it all. There are the teams that fall a little short, but they give it a good effort. Everybody remembers that 2000, and I know a lot of you don't follow basketball, but there was a team in 2004, Los Angeles Lakers. They had 4 Hall of Famers: Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe Bryant, and they added Gary Payton and Karl Malone in free agency. That team's remembered as a failure, but they made the NBA Finals. The Jets in 2024, they go down as like an all-time bust team. They go down with like the dream team the Eagles had in 2011. They go back with the early Dan Snyder team in Washington when they signed Deion Sanders and Bruce Smith. You want to go to other sports, the Lakers in 2012 and 2013, they had Kobe Bryant and Pau Gasol, and they traded for Steve Nash and Dwight Howard. And the team that I compared the Jets with last week, the 1992 New York Mets, who had a book written about them, the worst team money could buy, a Mets team that had a lot of stars on it and finished in 5th place in a 6-team division. And a week ago, after the Jets were blown out by the Pittsburgh Steelers, I said the Jets were football's version of the worst team money could buy. But I got to be honest with you. I think after losing to the Patriots, they're worse than the worst team money could buy. It's tough to believe how bad this team is right now. They just lost to maybe the least talented team in the NFL. And here's the worst part. As the Patriots were marching down the field on that final drive, which gained them 70 yards, and the Jets just needed one stop, one play would have won it. Twice they got the Patriots to 3rd and long. Patriots converted both times. The game was on the line. They just needed one stop. Stop the Patriots on 4th and goal from the 1. You win the game. Through that entire sequence, and I'm sure you feel the same way, not once was I confident the Jets would get the stop. I was hoping to get the stop. I thought there was a chance to get the stop, but confidence, not by any stretch of the imagination. And I think we have to say at this point, the Jets may have big names on this team. It's a collection of players. It's not a team. And I know that's a cliche, but sometimes cliches are true. And I can't stop thinking about a couple of things. First of all, Davonte Adams comes to this team a week ago. And I'm sure there's a more polite way to say this, but I'll just say it. It's true. Davonte Adams quit on his old team. He absolutely quit on the Las Vegas Raiders. And this guy who quit on his previous team comes to New York, and the first thing he thinks is, man, I'm really alarmed by this culture here. And he felt compelled to give a locker room speech, which was very publicized last week. Well, Aaron Rodgers made a big deal about how it was the realest speech he's ever heard. Well, apparently it wasn't real enough to help the Jets win games. It wasn't real enough to help this team get victories. I mean, look, I'm not going to make accusations about do guys care enough or not, or are guys trying to collect paychecks? But you watch this team and you look at these big names and you see them not gelling. And you see the guys who are underperforming. And look, part of it's age. We see Aaron Rodgers is 40. You hear what the guys in the Patriots locker room are saying, that he can't move anymore. And you watch him on a play-to-play basis. I know statistically he had a pretty good game, but play-to-play, he's very shaky. He's very erratic. We've seen Tyron Smith struggles this year. We've seen Mike Williams struggle to find a role in this offense. Mike Williams maybe hasn't been on the level of Aaron Rodgers or Tyron Smith during his career, but has been a very good player and just hasn't produced. Davonte Adams has shown up and really done nothing. I know he had one catch on the touchdown drive the Jets had in the fourth quarter, but was completely shut down otherwise. Really added nothing. And his stats look better than his performance was, because he caught a meaningless 16-yard passes. Time expired in this game. And Hassan Reddick, who had as many tackles in this game as you or I did. That drive in the fourth quarter, Hassan Reddick, it would not have fixed everything that's gone wrong with him this year. It would not have gotten fans to forgive him for everything that's happened. But that last drive, when the Patriots were driving down the field, I kept waiting for Hassan Reddick to have his moment against a team that does not have a good offensive line. That's what you got Reddick to get sacks. You especially got Reddick to get sacks at that moment when you're trying to close out a game. And these stars simply have not produced. They have not shown up. And, we're going to talk a lot about what went wrong in the days and weeks and months ahead. But I can't help look at this team and just say, you know what? There's a lot of talent there. But is there a cohesive team? Are there players out there? Do these guys work together? Do the parts all fit? And one of the things I've said through the years, and I've been very consistent about it, I was consistent about it before, that you can go back and listen to my old shows. I said this before the Jets started doing this, is in the NFL, sometimes teams see the allure of adding all these big names, but it doesn't always work together. Sometimes the personalities don't match. Sometimes, frankly, guys are too old. But sometimes the pieces just don't fit on your team. And after everything we've gone through with Hassan Reddick, and this may not be the first time I've said this, but I can't help but think about a guy the Jets got rid of to help make room for Hassan Reddick. And that was John Franklin Myers. And John Franklin Myers fit what the Jets needed to do really well. Because while JFM individually may not have been a great run defender, having him on that defensive line was really important for the run defense, because he just fit. And the reason he fit was that Jets play small in their back seven. They value speed over size. So a way to compensate for that is to be bigger than other teams on your defensive line. And he gave you a third 290, 300-pounder. But more than that, he was a meat and potatoes kind of guy. He's the kind of guy who doesn't generate a lot of headlines. He doesn't put up a bunch of flashy statistics. But in football, especially on the lines, it's not all about the numbers. Sometimes you need guys to do the dirty work. And, if you ask some, analyst at NFL Network who's trying to, generate ratings, or, you listen to WFAN, and I don't mean to demean WFAN because I know there's some good hosts there. But if you ask these people, would you rather have Hassan Reddick or John Franklin Myers? Of course, everyone's going to say Hassan Reddick. Hassan Reddick's a star. Hassan Reddick's flashy. But for this particular team, I think John Franklin Myers is a better fit. I think he's a better player. And I think that one of the lessons that we will come away with from this 2024 Jets team, and it's a lesson that we should have learned a lot in the past, because the Jets have made this mistake over and over, maybe not as much as they've done this year, but, Le'Veon Bell, I can go back to when I was a kid. There are millions of examples of the Jets chasing the big name, being obsessed with making the splash, being obsessed with winning the back pages, trying to impress the beat writers, trying to impress ESPN, trying to be the top story on the morning show on ESPN. But the guys who are the flashiest names aren't always the best fit for your football team. And sometimes, as we've seen with Hassan Reddick, they're just looking to get paid. They don't have loyalty to your team. They're not. John Franklin Myers never would have held out on the Jets. John Franklin Myers, you may have been able to extend him for a relative discount, because he's a guy who's got loyalty or had loyalty to the Jets. Not anymore, because look at the way they treated him. And it's not just about JFM and Reddick. It's just across the board. This is what the Jets did. And in many ways, and this is not the only one, we're going to talk a lot in the days and weeks ahead about this. The Jets set themselves up for this. Now, head here on the Locked On Jets podcast, we'll focus more on this game in particular because I think in a lot of ways, this was a microcosm of this team and of the season. And I'll explain why as we continue here on this Monday edition of Locked On Jets. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. Now, we know the Jets are about to be hiring a new head coach, and quite frankly, they're also probably going to be looking to hire a new general manager soon. Maybe they should head on over to LinkedIn because LinkedIn's not just a jobs board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, including those who are not actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. And on LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and may not have the time or resources to hire. So LinkedIn is constantly finding new ways to make the process easier. They even just launched the feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is also brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You pick more or less than on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. You can win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the bonus. It's guaranteed $50. And Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off, which ones aren't? Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on Prize Picks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL. It's one word with no space, LOCKEDONNFL, to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Thank you so much for making Locked On Jets your first listener, first watch every day. Big shout out to you, everydayers. This is a daily podcast covering the New York Jets. Jets fell to 2-6 on Sunday as they were defeated by the New England Patriots, an awful Patriots team. But the Jets are just as awful, maybe more awful, because the Jets are now 2-6. They're on a 5-game losing streak. Patriots beat the Jets 25-22. In many ways, I think this game was a microcosm of the season for the New York Jets. And I think the New York Jets have shown us that they are one of the worst teams in the NFL. And you know what? That might sound harsh to say, but you reach a point where you have to look at results. I know the Jets have Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. I know they have all this star power. But at some point, that doesn't matter. At some point, what matters are the results on the field. And this is a New York Jets team that is now 2-6. This is a New York Jets team that has played like one complete game all season long. And on their way to 2-6, if we're going to be honest, there have only been 2 opponents that just have played who have played well. San Francisco, week 1, and then last week, for a half, the Steelers. And in both of those games, the Jets have been blown out. The Jets have 2 wins all season. One's against Tennessee, a 1-win team. The other's New England, an awful team who just beat the Jets in the second meeting between the teams. At some point, you just have to say that this is a really, really bad football team. And as I've said so many times this year, I mean, practically every week, the Jets lost a game where the other team tried to hand it to them. The Patriots not only are they a bad team, they played very poorly in this game. And there's one stat that I keep seeing cited as evidence that the Jets quote unquote dominated this game, and that's the total yards gained, because Jets gained 336 yards versus 247 to New England. But if you watch that game, you know that stat's deceiving. The reason that stat's deceiving is that the Patriots dropped, the Patriots receivers couldn't catch a cold. They dropped 1 million passes. The Patriots probably would have outgained the Jets if not for all the drops. Now, that's a sign maybe the Patriots didn't deserve to win the game, but it's not like the Jets were playing dominant defense in this game. And really, the Jets failed in all 3 phases of this one. They, on offense, I mean, how many times did they have to burn a timeout or take a penalty? Well, they burned 4 timeouts trying to avoid delay of game penalties. And here's the one thing I don't get is that the critical 2-point conversion. There was a critical point in the fourth quarter of this game after the Jets scored a touchdown to take the lead. This was before the Brissett 70-yard drive. And the Jets took a delay of game on a 2-point conversion. And this is after burning 4 timeouts as the play clock was running down. Jets were up 22-17 at this point. So a touchdown there would have meant that the Brissett touchdown drive would have only tied the game and we would have gone to overtime. So I don't understand why the Jets didn't take a timeout there. Aaron Rodgers, look, the numbers look good for Rodgers. If you watch that game, he did not move well. He was inconsistent. He missed throws. Kind of the same story we've seen through much of the season. And the Jets really didn't run the ball all that effectively against the Patriots team that's been gashed on the ground. Jets only gained 112 yards on 28 carries. And, Breece Hall actually ran pretty well. I think Braylon Allen was the guy who struggled in this one. Breece Hall had 80 yards on 16 carries. Braylon Allen only had 32 on 12. So it was not a great offensive day for the Jets. On the defensive side of the ball, and look, the Jets offense wasted timeouts, and that came back to haunt them. Came back to haunt them near the end of the first half. Certainly came back to haunt them in the second half when the Jets ran out of time. The Jets couldn't use any timeouts, down the stretch of that game. The defensive side of the ball, you can't cite any more defensive statistics. The Jets, I keep seeing all these statistics that suggest the Jets defense is good. Jets defense can't get stops when they need to. And Jacoby Brissett torched them. In the fourth quarter, Jacoby Brissett led 2 long scoring drives to put the Patriots ahead. There was a field goal drive he led in the fourth quarter that gave the Patriots the lead momentarily before the Jets put together the touchdown drive. And then a 70-yard touchdown drive to win it, where the Jets had 3 opportunities to get off the field, a 3rd and 9, a 3rd and 10, and then a 4th and goal on the 1-yard line. And in some ways, if you want to talk about a fitting way for, if you want to consider this the end of the Jets season, there's no more fitting way if you watch the first 8 weeks than for the Jets defense to not get a stop in a power situation, because this is a defensive line that's been manhandled. It's a defensive line that's been pushed around all season long. And the Stars did not step up for this team. And that's another one of the stories. Davonte Adams, who, again, statistically, I guess his game looks okay, but it was not a dominant performance. I know he drew a tough corner matchup in Gonzalez, but he got pretty much dominated. Adams ended with the game with 4 catches for 54 yards, and one of those was a 16-yard catch as time expired, which didn't help the Jets at all, which was his long catch of the day. On the defensive side of the ball, Reddick did nothing. Sauce Gardner, who is just having a bad season. And I love Sauce Gardner, and I think Sauce Gardner, through his first 2 seasons, was one of the top corners in the league. But if we're going to call Sauce for what he's been this year, Sauce Gardner has not done a good job. I know he struggled. He's always struggled in run support, but is he getting beat too often? He got beat for a huge catch on that last drive. The offensive side of the ball, I just put up 22 points, but wasn't that great of a performance. Special teams, Greg Zuerlein misses more kicks, and that I talked about this in my post game podcast yesterday. Greg Zuerlein should not be on this team right now, and it's an example of how the Jets are run poorly right now. How they don't address issues until they've reached a crisis point. Greg Zuerlein has been an issue all season long. And this is why I can't. That's why I can't listen to people saying, "Well, if they just made these kicks, our record would be 5-3 or 6-2 right now." Well, you've had an issue for weeks and you haven't addressed it. So how can I give you a pass on these losses? You can't. But there were other special teams issues. You gave up a big punt return, which kind of sparked the Pats in the second half. Early in the second half, it felt like the Jets had kind of taken control of the game late in the first half. Big punt return sparks the Pats, sets up a score, and then suddenly it's a back and forth game the rest of the way. Even Irv Charles whiffing on a chance to down a punt in the first half. Ball gets past him and goes into the end zone. The issue with the Jets right now is there's just not a lot that's good for this team. Jets entered this week 21st in DVOA on offense, 21st on DVOA on defense. It's just not a good team. At some point, you just have to say, you know what? They may have a lot of star power. It's not a good team. And I think the Jets failed in every phase in this game. And it's fitting. If this is the way you view the unofficial end of the season, well, this is a game. This is the type of game that kind of explains how we got to this point. Now, head on the Locked On Jets podcast, we'll look forward where the Jets go from this point. I think it's very difficult. I think obviously this season is unsalvageable, and we'll explain why. And we'll also talk about what the Jets might look to do at the trade deadline here on this Monday edition of Locked On Jets. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time is the best place to go to get your tickets. I've used Game Time myself plenty of times. Just pull out my phone, even a couple hours before my event. I can't believe the deals I get on Game Time. Exciting week in New York sports. World Series is coming to New York today through Wednesday. Game 3, Game 4, Game 5 if necessary. Yankees hosting the Dodgers, trying to get back into the series after rough first 2 games in LA. Look, there's no easy ticket to get for the World Series, but Game Time is the best place to go to get in on the action. And then Thursday night, of course, the Jets host the Houston Texans at MetLife Stadium. I'd imagine that's going to be a much easier ticket, but the best deals are still on Game Time. It is the place to go. So download the Game Time app. Create an account and use code LOCKEDONNFL, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. This is the Locked On Jets podcast here on this Monday. We are recapping a really ugly loss for the New York Jets. I've seen a lot of bad losses through the years. In the history of this podcast, we've seen a lot of bad losses. This one's up there with any of them. When you talk about the expectations for this football team this year, when you talk about just how bad the Patriots are, and maybe not as significant, but there is an element. You never like to lose to New England. This was an opportunity for the Jets to sweep the Patriots in the season series for the first time since 2000, and they squandered it. A loss that's difficult to explain, but a loss that, without any doubt, closes what little, and I'm not sure there was a whole lot of hope left for this team. I'm not sure there should have been a whole lot of hope left for this team, but it's just about over right now for the 2024 New York Jets. If the Jets want to make the playoffs this year, I always view 10 wins as kind of the benchmark that makes you feel safe getting into the playoffs. There might be some years, especially now with the seventh playoff spot, that maybe 9-8 gets you in. Well, the Jets are 2-6 right now, and there's only 9 games left in the season. So, at 2-6, that's going to be really difficult to make the playoffs, because with 9 games left, to get to 9-8, you'll have to go 7-2 the rest of the way. And needless to say, that's a really tough ask. It's a tough ask of any team. I mean, I'm not sure Kansas City can go 7-2 over the last 9 games. I'm not sure Baltimore can go 7-2 over the last 9 games. And this Jets team, I think as much as anything, they just haven't shown you they're capable of playing well at all. They've had literally one good game to this point in the season. So I don't know how you can look at this and have any belief that this team's capable of putting together a run, because they haven't played back-to-back good games all year. They've, in the first 8 games of the season, they played one good game, and they won a second game that I think in many ways they were very fortunate to win against the Tennessee Titans. And the other aspect of this is, you see the guys who are struggling for this team. I just don't see how it gets better, because if you look at Rodgers' struggles, a lot of it's, I think, just based on the fact his body's not holding up, based on the fact he's 40. His body doesn't bounce back the way it used to. This week, we added the ankle and the hamstring to the injury. I'm sorry, we added a knee and a hamstring to the injury report. He's already been dealing with an ankle injury. These hits are just going to keep adding up. Now, I know the Jets have the bye ahead. I know they'll have a mini bye this week after the game against Houston, so they'll have a little extra time to rest from that. But it just doesn't feel like these guys are going to hold up. And I think Tyron Smith's the same thing. These older guys, the later you get into the season, the tougher it is for them. And you go down this roster. I mean, one thing about the Jets the last couple of years, all their additions have been older guys. The big guys on this team, how many guys, who have we talked about? Rodgers, Tyron Smith, Mike Williams, Reddick. These guys are all 30. So they've banked a lot on a bunch of older players being able to hold up. And it hasn't worked out. CJ Mosley's another one. CJ Mosley left this game. Now, I know CJ Mosley wasn't an addition, but another older guy who was kind of an important player for this team, who's just not holding up. So all of this is to say that even like the long shot idea that this team can go on a run it just doesn't seem very likely because they haven't shown any capability of playing well. They just lost to the least talented team in the league. So this team, there's a collection of big names, but it's not a cohesive team. It's not even a team. These big names aren't even that good anymore, which means that, and I don't think the Jets will do this, but I'm just going to say it for posterity's sake. There's an obvious move. There are obvious moves coming up at the trade deadline. When you just trade everybody who's in their 30s, you get whatever you can for them. So Rodgers is not going to be tradable. And I guess, I don't know, maybe he's got some value to keep people coming to the games or something like that. Maybe it's like, you can sell it as like the end of, you can see the last games of a living legend at MetLife Stadium because there's not going to be a whole lot else to attract people to come out to the stadium to watch this team. But, whatever you can get from Mike Williams, he should be gone. Whatever, and this one's going to be really tough because you're not going to get equal value to what you gave up for the guy, but Reddick should be gone. Look, I think it's fair to say it's not. I try not to like read into what people's motivations are, but I think it's fair to say with Reddick, he doesn't really care that much about the Jets right now. He's just trying to get paid. Let him go get paid somewhere else. Send him to some other team to play out the year and get whatever you can back for him. You'll never get the third round pick you gave up, but it's time to cut your losses. That's a sunk cost. That pick you lost is a sunk cost. You go down up and down the lineup. I don't know if you can get anything from Mosley because he's banged up, but you could trade for Morgan. You could get if you can get anything from Morgan, Moses, or Smith. I mean, look, there's got to be some team out there desperate for offensive line play that'll roll the dice on these guys, even though they haven't been all that great this year. And I'll say it. This is another one. This is one that's even less likely. This is the least likely of them all. And another guy you'll never get equal value for. But if we were actually thinking about the future of this team, and we're thinking about what's best for the team, they should trade Davonte Adams. And you'll never get a 3 back, and you'll get roasted, and rightly so, because you never should have made this trade. This trade was never a good idea. I said that at the time. You'll never get a 3 back for him. So you'll essentially be, trading him for less than what you got from him. You'll essentially be turning a third round pick into something less in the span of a couple weeks. But what's more valuable for your team? Whatever Davonte Adams is going to do over these last 9 games, or an asset that can actually help your team in the future? Because I think we know he's probably not coming back next year. Because I think we know that his fate's probably tied to Rodgers. And the way Rodgers looks, and the way this team's gone, the way this season's gone, it becomes increasingly less likely by the week that Rodgers is coming back, to the point where I think it would be a major surprise if Aaron Rodgers was on this team in 2025. That means Davonte Adams is going to be gone. So do you want to lose him for nothing, or do you at least want to get back something for your investment? Because whatever he produces the rest of the way is not really going to help this team in any way. This season's lost. It's over. I wish it wasn't the case, but this season has gone sideways. So the Jets really ought to be thinking of their future right now. Jets have not thought a lot about their future the last 2 years, and it's been to their own detriment. And they've made a lot of very short-sighted decisions in this time. But it's time to cut your losses. It's time to turn this thing around. Time to start thinking of the future, because that's all we got. We don't have the present anymore. Anyway, that's all for today's episode. This has been the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day is our motto. As always, if you enjoy the show, hit the subscribe button where you're watching or listening so that you'll never miss an episode. If you enjoy the show and are listening on a podcast source, please give it a 5-star review. And if you're watching on YouTube and enjoy the show, give this episode a big thumbs up. Helps us out, helps other Jets fans find the show. Enjoy your Monday, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow to talk more Jets.